Introducing Nose to Tail, a podcast where we explore the world of aviation lifecycle solutions, insights, and more. Presented by Jet Midwest.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Patrick Kraus with Jet Midwest. This is the Nose to Tail podcast. I'm here remote in Kansas City, and I've got Sandra from Genesis. She's in Greensboro. Sandra, welcome. I always like to start with a little get to know you about how you got started in aviation and maybe how your journey has gone. So why don't you give the folks a few glimpses into how your career has come along?
First, thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I was just looking for something different. I came from an IT background, and I was really tired of putting 1,000 miles a week on my car. I believe that Santiago hired me because I spoke French. One of our biggest customers at that time was in France. And so he hired me, and I have never felt so appreciated in my life. I've got a long line of sales experience and selling services as well. I had to adjust to some things because I was used to wearing a suit and, it's just different. And I love it. I love the aviation family. I am amazed that I'm in the position that I'm in. I'm just amazed, and I'm grateful that Marty and Santi saw something in me that made them feel like that they could trust me to be the COO of their company. So, although Santi would have had me traveling every other week for the rest of my life if he'd had his way, but he left us, so.
So tell me a little bit. It sounds like the ownership was it more of a blue collar ownership as you walked into the door in terms of they grew up building the shop themselves, actual mechanics on the floor?
I would say yes. Yes.
And I've seen that experience from a lot of folks in the industry, right? Where that's the founder, and so the journey that all of the people who join the founder take is a little bit different than maybe a white collar job where they're started maybe from the finance side of the house, and so that definitely lends itself to certainly the interpersonal part where they're expecting boots on the ground and drive to get everything done. So I won't force you to speak too much French. I'm lucky enough to have Air France as a client, and I attempted to learn a little bit of French, and I just didn't have the patience maybe for it. And they all speak great English, so I don't necessarily.
I had lived there for 6 months. I had been a 6-week exchange student, and then I had lived there for 6 months, and I had also traveled throughout my life, and so I understood different cultures. And that made me a really good fit here. He said, go grow Europe, and I did. And he was like, I said, you hired me to do this. Did you think I wasn't going to do it?
If you prove yourself too valuable, then you get more opportunities to prove yourself more valuable. I think it's from an owner's perspective, I have the same tendency every time Ashley or someone on her team seems to be doing a great job. We go, well, let's give you more of that since you're doing a great job.
Yeah, but people that are driven like that.
I would agree, and I'm the same way. I miss the travel, sitting more in an executive chair the last couple of years versus a more business development centric role, and I do miss the travel.
That's what's happening to me.
So it's been cut in like half. Now, when you do travel, and let's talk maybe about Europe, or I guess we can open up anywhere. Where has been the best place that you've been to that you've got some good stories that you could give us?
I travel alone most of the time. Now I'm starting to drag people along because I'm moving in a different direction. And I took a trip one time where they were throwing tires off the bridge at Orly Airport. And so I looked at Santiago and I said, I don't want to fly into Orly. And he said, okay. So I flew into Heathrow. They were trying to put me in a room, and there was somebody else already in the room. And then the next morning, I was going down for breakfast, and that door came flying open in security, and this guy came rolling out and down the hall, and he jumped up and ran downstairs. And then when I went out to my car, I'd been sideswiped. It was like one of those trips. It might not be funny, but it's just, for me, it was one of those trips when any and everything that could happen happened. And so it was crazy. But I have this one. Marty and I went to Washington, D.C. for a meeting, and we got stuck on the tarmac. And she was drawing this on her iPad, and we were cracking up. And all the other people were really pissed off at us because we were having a really good time. This is
While they're stuck.
yes, this is Marty, and this is me.
I can certainly say it takes courage to rent a car in London itself, just to
And drive down to Gatwick.
Yeah, in the taxi service there is just so good. I'm just like, even if I'm saving a few dollars, it's just not worth it. I'd rather have the guy who knows how to navigate traffic and
the challenge.
and get through the cities is great. I've taken the tunnel before. That it was a great experience. Bought a ticket and just said, hey, I'm going to go do a day in Paris. Actually had my wife in town for a trade show, and I said, hey, let's go to Paris tomorrow and spend the night. She goes, really? Oh, yeah, just jump on the train and go do it. So we did that, and that was an interesting experience, but I certainly can't imagine renting a car and making that journey. So let's talk maybe a little bit about Genesis, and maybe give us and the listeners a flavor for what you're best at, and then we probably want to talk a little bit about what's next, what's the next part of your capabilities, or what's something that is peaking for you right now that we really should inform everybody about.
We do electromech, avionics, and actuation. And actuation, I'm going to tell you we're good at all of it. But we are really kick butt in actuation. And we do a lot of 747s, so we've become known as the cargo carrier people. But we do other Boeing. So now we're out visiting and going, we can do those, and we can do those, and we can do that, so a little bit of Airbus. And we have a lot of experience in our shop. And they're just good guys, they're just down-to-earth guys. And one of the things that's happening, anyone out there who's listening that's working with 747s, and I honestly believe if one more broker tells me that 747s are dead, yeah. So they're going to be flying for a while, and it's getting more and more difficult to find parts. In fact, at the MRO, I was running around asking other companies that I know and trust, hey, if I can get to Boeing and we could create a PO with enough of the parts that we can't get and have a conversation, would you be in? Do you trust me? And they're all looking at me like, I said, hey, you're in the same boat we are, and don't tell me you're not. I know you are, and we're going to have to do something. So a lot of shops are now working with engineers, and they're hiring engineers, and they're looking at PMA parts. And we might be flirting with that.
Well, really, that's what our aftermarket, it's what we're great at. You take entrepreneurs and you give them an opportunity to go, hey, listen, there's a shortfall here. We need to fill this shortfall. And I think you're absolutely correct that I can perceive the aftermarket, not being as bullish on 747 parts, maybe just because of the age of the assets. Right. But like you, I've seen there's a lot of 747 material in our system, and the performance on our sales level has not gone down at all. It's changed. What was hot 8 years ago, it's a different variety of parts today. And again, as those airframe parts start aging even further, things like CF680, thrust reversers, as those age a little bit further, the prices are actually going up. And again, the market's not saturated because they're getting consumed. I love to hear that you guys are potentially jumping into some of the PMA and really looking on how to solve those. From an engineering standpoint, I assume you guys have some DER repairs and you've got on-site engineers supporting what you're doing?
We don't have on-site engineer, but we have a firm that we work with. And then for like DERs and when they have to be approved. And we have quite a few DERs, but most of them currently are on 747 aircraft. But we have a lot of customers that fly 74s. And we're a can-do shop. So some of the people I talked to at MRO were looking at me like I was crazy. And I said, I went to a conference. They were talking about thinking outside the box. That's what I'm doing. And we can either all be at odds and nobody gets parts, or we can get together and go talk to whoever we need to go talk to. Because I don't know that we wanted to be a PMA company. We just want to be able to provide the parts to our customers. If you send us 747 parts to be repaired, we want to be able to find the parts to be able to do that repair or overhaul. I know everybody says parts are hard to find, but it amazes me how you get caught up in your own box. And coming from a repair background, I was calling people I'm connected to and saying, who's got the 747 material? Where's the 747 material? And nobody had it. And so I went to a couple of conferences that we don't usually attend and was educated about other things. One of the things that the pandemic did for us was allow a lot of us to be on webinars and gain access to information that we would have never had otherwise. And so, only 50% of the 747s that they expected to be retired and torn down were torn down. Okay, there's the parts. I had not thought of it that way. And then I was like, okay, people, there are reasons, but till purchasing that when they can't find the part for the work order.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know over the last couple of years, there's been a couple of web services. One of them is teardowns.aero that came out, and I know we list our aircraft on there and everything that we have in dismantle. So sometimes you can get a little bit of visibility on what's in teardown. It's usually not a perfect equation. Certainly, if I started a teardown on a 747 in 2021, it might be sitting idle, but the higher end actuation and things certainly is going to be monetized by this point. But the aircraft are still out there, and we do pick and pull parts pretty regularly, and so do our competitors that do the same thing, where Jet Midwest really makes it a mission to say, I'm going to keep kind of one of every aircraft type that I dismantle. I try and keep one of them for a really long time, so that some of those airframey parts that really struggle, or somebody has a corrosion challenge on something that just has no one made it.
You're creating your niche in the industry there.
I mean, you think some of those airplanes, 30 years old, and they didn't expect them to still be flying.
Right.
Maybe they did. Maybe Boeing did.
Right.
Certainly anything that gets converted into the freighter market adds, 15 to 20 years, which has been great. So I can certainly empathize with that, and certainly that resource of teardowns.aero that came into the marketplace was really nice for people who just, hey, here's one place to go. Everybody who tears down airplanes puts their assets on there no matter where they are in the world, or if they don't, they should. And then there's just contact, right? Just, hey, call the guys at Jet Midwest and see what you can have. Call the guys at GRG and see what they've got sitting out in the desert, and if they've got any of these. So I can certainly see that vision coming through.
Well, we've always been looking for, as removed, and you almost can't buy as removed now. That's something I've seen. That's been my experience through it'll be 11 years for me in October. And I wish I'd found this industry earlier in my career, because I really do love it. I love the challenge. I love the people. I just love it. I love everything about it. And I love to fly. I love to land. I've always loved to travel. So, but parts were so easy to find. And we talk about how Santiago this and Santiago that, but we're living in a different world. And I don't think it'll ever go back.
I would also say that the change I've been through in my career, been through a number, was started in 99, right? So I got to see what happened post 9/11.
Yes.
Actually put a correction in the market that I think, in a look back, was probably due.
Yes.
The 2008-9 economic challenges globally had an impact on how the airlines spent money, and obviously the pandemic was another one. And I think as the marketplace always evolves, right? And since we're always looking on how to evolve with it and create new strategies.
Always weeding.
Yeah. Always fighting your way through the jungle, aren't you? But you're correct on the as removed parts. We used to sell a lot as removed, years ago. And what we've found is that when we sell our parts as removed, we typically don't achieve the correct margins in the marketplace.
We support people like you because we wanted to repair and overhaul your as removed parts. So we sort of have had to back up and punt, but that's kind of where I come in.
Having great vendors like yourselves that we can send stuff to and rely on those things getting repaired, and that the margin's right. And if the margin's wrong, if our unit happens to have some challenges that we're going to figure it out, right? Because we know what our analytics folks, they know exactly what we need to achieve out of that. And partners like you guys really help us hit those numbers because you understand the same mission that we're on, which has been pretty good.
We'll continue this discussion on the next episode of Nose to Tail, a podcast presented by Jet Midwest. Don't forget to please like and subscribe to our channel.